count them, two exciting new additions the Seahawks made to their team in the last 48 hours. Hey everybody, dragonhawkguy here, and this is the second video that I've posted to my Seahawks YouTube page. This is dragonhawkguy, and it is March 25th, 2020, and we are at the end of the first week of NFL free agency, and we have two exciting new additions to the Seahawks squad. Let's check them out. So the first of these two new Seahawks isn't even a free agency signing, it's a trade. John Schneider works his magic yet again. Quinton Dunbar, quarterback, Washington Redskins, coming to the Seahawks for a 5th-round draft pick. Pro Football Focus ranks Dunbar the second best cornerback in the entire NFL, behind Richard Sherman. And he's only $3.5 million against a salary cap. This is an amazing trade. Getting a guy who's just now entering his prime, 28 years old is what he'll be next year, for $3.5 million. Your average starting cornerback is really, really expensive in the NFL for a lot of really obvious reasons with how the NFL is now at being a pass-first league. So to get a guy who's ranked second in the NFL, who's still under... Well, he's not technically under his rookie contract. It was an extension of his rookie contract. But to get a guy who's ranked second in the league as a corner for $3.5 million for a 5th-round draft pick? Oh, man. The Washington Redskins blew this deal. The only real knock that there seems to be on Dunbar so far is that he has a few injury issues. So just looking at his stats online, it looks like he, generally speaking, plays between 10 and 14 games each season, so you're not going to get a full 16-game schedule out of him for the most part. But he did have, in those 11 or 12 games, he did have 5 interceptions last year. So I think this is a player that's going to be a great member of Legion of Boom. And never forget that Pete Carroll, his first coaching job in the NFL was as a defensive backs coach. So Pete Carroll's always been defense first, but he's always been back to front on his defensive philosophy. So hopefully Quinton Dunbar can master the kick step and turn his hips really quickly, technique that the Seahawks like doing with their defensive backs for the Legion of Boom. So hopefully some combination of starting corners of Shaquille Griffin and Quinton Dunbar, with Trey Flowers either being the starting nickel so they can play more nickelback, will emerge as a much better secondary for the Seahawks defense next year. The other big player acquisition of the last 48 hours is wide receiver Phillip Dorsett. Now, Dorsett was one of Tom Brady's favorite targets in New England, one of his only targets. He was roughly the 3rd leading receiver on the Patriots last year. Obviously, he's not a Hall of Famer, but he is also one of the fastest players in the NFL. So if you look at what this does for the Seahawks wide receivers now, we now have Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Phillip Dorsett as one of the fastest wide receiver combinations in the NFL. You combine that with Russell Wilson's scrambling ability. Can you imagine what defensive coordinators are going to be trying to do to stop them now? They're not going to have any options. They already have a pain in their rear trying to stop Russell Wilson. And now they've got not 1, not 2, but 3 speedy wide receivers. The Seahawks wide receivers are going to be impossible to stop next year. And the best part is Phillip Dorsett only made $2.5 million last year. Now, obviously, we don't know how much he's going to be making yet for the Seahawks. They haven't released the contract information yet. But assuming it's roughly that $2.5 million, Phillip Dorsett's salary cap number is going to be really, really low. Which, obviously, when you have $35 million going towards Russell Wilson, you have to be really smart with doing a lot of salary cap friendly maneuvers. Phillip Dorsett for $3 million or the $2.5 million that he made last year, I think this is a really, really smart and strategic signing, especially when you already have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf as starters in front of him. Oh, man. Good luck to the NFC West defensive coordinators trying to stop them now. So when you look at the two players we added in the last 48 hours, Phillip Dorsett and Quinton Dunbar, we just added a ton of speed, a ton of athleticism, and a ton of depth to both the wide receivers and the cornerbacks, with only adding, I'm guessing, probably $6 to $7 million on the salary cap. Wow. Two quality veteran players just entering their prime for roughly $7 million under the cap? Are you kidding me? Giving Russell Wilson in the offense more talent and speed on the outside, and giving Bobby Wagner and the defense more flexibility on the back end. Two brilliant moves by John Schneider and Pete Carroll. So if we're looking at what the Seahawks have done so far this offseason, I think John Schneider and Pete Carroll have hit a home run so far. Check this out. We re-signed Jaron Reed to a cap-friendly deal. We brought back to town Super Bowl champion and member of the 2012 draft class, Bruce Irvin. We signed 4 offensive linemen, including B.J. Finney, Brandon Shell, and Cedric Ogbuehi, and Chance Womack, none of whom broke the bank in terms of salary cap. And now, adding to that, Phillip Dorsett and Quinton Dunbar. And added to that, the earlier signing of Greg Olsen, also a cap-friendly deal. We've hit, as Seahawks fans, a major player acquisition streak here the first week of the offseason, and John Schneider and Pete Carroll haven't even broken a sweat yet. This is looking to be an amazing offseason. The Seahawks still have a ton of salary cap space, and not only have we survived the first wave of free agency, we still have June cut downs. We have roster cuts coming up from other teams. We have training camp veteran cuts that'll be coming along at the end of August as teams try and shed a little bit of extra salary cap space with younger players coming up that emerge during training camp. So there's a ton of opportunities still to come for improving the Seahawks roster. On top of all this, John Schneider and Pete Carroll just nailed it out of the park during the first week of the offseason. And we still haven't even got to the NFL draft yet, which sadly will not be in Vegas anymore. But I think the Seahawks have set themselves up really, really nicely. We're now 3 deep at tight end. We're now 3 deep at wide receiver. And we added Quinton Dunbar to the mix in the secondary to hopefully create Legion of Boom 2.0. I think, obviously injuries, you can never predict injuries. So the only thing we've really lost so far in free agency is George Fant, and I wish George Fant well, but $10 million a year for George Fant to the New York Jets. Who else other than the New York Jets is going to pay George Fant $10 million a year? I love George Fant. I love his effort. I love his attitude. I love the improvement that he's shown over the years. But if the New York Jets are going to pay George Fant $10 million a year, and the Seahawks are only going to be paying Quinton Dunbar as the second best corner in the NFL $3.5 million a year next year, that is salary cap management right there, folks. So sadly, George Fant is going away. Also, Quentin Jefferson is leaving via free agency, and Jermaine Ifedi, starting right tackle Jermaine Ifedi, also leaving. So the only other really big question hanging out there right now is Jadeveon Clowney. He's not been signed yet, and it's the end of the first week of free agency. He's rated by many as the best free agent still left on the market, but no one has bit so far on that roughly $19-20 million a year that Jadeveon Clowney wanted. And who can blame him? I mean, he was the first overall pick in the draft a few years ago. He's a Pro Bowl caliber player. He dominated the NFC champion, pains me to say that, the NFC champion 49ers on Monday Night Football. And at 27, 28 years old, this is his opportunity to get paid. So you can't begrudge him wanting to get paid. But so far, no one in the NFL, including the Seahawks, has stepped up to meet that price point. I don't know whether the Seahawks have made all of these really cap-friendly moves that they've made so far in order to be able to afford Jadeveon, or whether it's just there's not as much of a market that Jadeveon Clowney and his agent anticipated. Either way, I think it's a good thing that the Seahawks didn't sign him to the $20 million a year contract, only because of his injury history and his inability to really maintain a 16 game per year schedule. The guy is a gamer. He fights to stay in the lineup, but as a defensive end, he takes a lot of abuse on the line of scrimmage, so he hasn't been able to play a full 16 game schedule, I think, except once in his career. So if we can get Jadeveon Clowney back, that would be really key, but price point is absolutely essential. We can't break the bank for Jadeveon Clowney. If we weren't going to do it for Earl Thomas and we weren't going to do it for Richard Sherman, we shouldn't do it for Jadeveon Clowney. If we can get Jadeveon Clowney for that $14-15 million a year, I would be really happy. I would lift John Schneider up onto my shoulders as a Super Bowl champion already myself. So, Jadeveon Clowney, re-sign, but only if the price is right. Anyway, guys, it's been Dragon Hawk Guy here. If you like what I'm doing here, like, share, and subscribe on your YouTube page. And be sure to comment down below. If you're a Seahawks fan, what do you think of this first week of free agency? What do you think about the player acquisitions so far? This team looks pretty good so far. What do you think? Tell me, which of these signings and trades do you like the most? And who should the Seahawks go out and get next? Tell me what you think down below. Like, share, and subscribe. Dragon Hawk Guy. See you next time.